Hey folks, Dr. Mike Isabel here for Renaissance Periodization, Hypertrophy Made Simple, video number 7. If you want more details, the Hypertrophy Guide Central Hub on our website and other longer form YouTube videos on this very channel. Here's the deal. Should you train to failure? And really, how hard should each set be when you do train for hypertrophy? First, what does the research say? Well, here's good news, bad news. There's no clear benefit of going any harder per set, at least every time, than 3 reps shy of failure, what we call 3 reps in reserve, 3 RIR. No benefit of going with 0 RIR versus 3 RIR in pretty much the average of the studies. Now, in addition to that, going all the way to absolute failure can cause tons of fatigue and prevent you from stringing together awesome back-to-back workouts because each workout becomes so fatiguing it can mess up the workout afterwards. However, you don't want to really think you're training 3 reps in reserve, but you're really just lying to yourself. You've never been to true failure. You could be 7 or 8 reps in reserve. The research shows that people are really bad at estimating and sometimes really cut themselves too much slack. So there's actually a really good approach that we can use between these two. Here's the best approach. You start your first week of training with certain weights, certain reps, certain sets. You write all that down and you start at roughly 3 reps in reserve. So you're holding yourself back a little bit. Then pretty much every week, every workout after that, you increase the weight a little bit, keeping the reps the same, or you increase the reps, keeping the weight the same, or some combination of both. So essentially, you're making the workout just a little bit more challenging every single time. At some point, either you get infinitely strong forever, that would really be ideal, or you're going to hit failure sooner or later. When you can hit failure and you can't match your performances and your performance starts to decay because of the crazy high fatigue, then you back away, probably take a deload, and then you go back for your next run, next month, next mesocycle of training. You start again at roughly 3 reps in reserve, now a little stronger, and you go up and up and up from there. So that's a really simple way to make sure you're getting close to failure and approaching it, but not training to failure all the time and getting super, super high fatigue. Now, there's something to say about training age and training to failure. When you're a beginner, your technique establishment is number 1, and good news, you get beginner gains. You don't have to train that hard. You have to train in a very good, regimented, adherent manner to make sure your technique establishment is good and you get really, really strong. You can do that by training starting at 4 or 5 reps in reserve, like really pretty easy, and going all the way up to roughly 2 reps in reserve, 2 reps shy of failure, and then recycling that whole process and just using more weight. Okay, more isn't needed for best results, and this gives you really, really great technique because if you go super close to failure as a beginner, your technique tends to break down and then you're really learning really crappy technique. As an intermediate, roughly 2 to 7 years into training, beginner was like 0 to 2 years of training, you want to start at around 3 reps in reserve and go to between 0 and 1 repetition in reserve every single mesocycle, every single time you train with the same exercises and rep ranges. So you start at roughly 3, you go to 0 or 1, 0 reps in reserve or true failure and exercises that won't fall on you, and 1 rep in the tank for exercises that will. So if you're doing squats or overhead presses, don't go all the way to failure because you could die. But if you're doing cable curls or some kind of row, you can go all the way to failure, no problem. For the advanced, there's some decent reason to believe that even going a little bit beyond failure might be helpful, and that the minimum difficulty of training has to be a little higher. So our recommendation here at RP is if you're advanced, maybe you want to start around 2 reps in reserve and then slowly decrease. So 2 reps in reserve in week 1, in week 2, maybe 1 rep in reserve, 0 to 1 reps in reserve, even a little further in week 3. And then week 4, right before you deload, you might want to do some beyond failure training, have a partner do rep assisted stuff with you, some cluster sets where you go to failure multiple times, really challenge the body. Maybe that's the only thing that grows you at that point because you're advanced. But for everyone else, it's much easier. Folks, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.